check out our streaming schedule for this week. We've got tons of content in terms of the NFL and college football, as we're going live just about every single day this week. So make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single moment where we go live. And now, on with our feature presentation.
There are many differences between the NFL and college football, from the way the game is played, to how long the halftime breaks are, to the playoff format, to the offseason, and the fact that you can't make trades or draft players. However, one of the noticeable differences that has really come to light, especially this year in particular, is what happens after the game with fans storming the field. In college, it feels like a weekly occurrence that you're going to see one particular set of fans rushing the field in celebration, excited about their team winning the big game. Pull off an upset, beat a rival, win at the last second, storm the field and get that collegiate experience in there. I mean, how many field stormings did we see during this 2024 season? It was way too many to count. But in the NFL, it's extremely rare, once in a blue moon. What you're watching right now are some of the field stormings that take place in NFL history. But there really haven't been a lot, especially with security being heightened at games in a post-9/11 world, with an older demographic attending games compared to a bunch of students who are feeling risk-averse, a more mixed crowd in terms of fan bases versus college, where the student section is filled with nothing but fans of the home team, and with professional stadium walls being incredibly hard to hop. The last time we saw a field storm occur in the NFL was when the Arizona Cardinals clinched their first playoff spot since moving to the desert, and that was at a college stadium back in 1998. It's been nearly 3 decades since the last time we actually saw fans storm the field. And even though there are a ton of things that I do like about the college game, that's one of those things that, even if it's fun in college, it's probably for the best that it doesn't happen in the NFL. I've done videos about field stormings before, so if you want to learn more about one of those, and a bizarre field storming during a 1979 game at Candlestick Park between the San Francisco 49ers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, click the card in the upper right corner. And if you want to learn more about weird and wacky stories throughout the history of the NFL that you might not know about, then this is the place for you, because we talk about all things NFL history all the time with a new video and a new live stream every single day. So if you like that sort of stuff, then be sure to hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Thanks in advance for your support as we try and hit 70,000 subscribers. And today, as you might have been able to guess, we're going to talk about another field storming incident. However, this field storm was, quite possibly, the worst in NFL history. Because imagine a field storm that ends in violence and ends with one of the fans pulling out a gun, because somehow said fan was able to get a gun into the stadium. Well, considering the fact that this took place during a game between the Buffalo Bills and the Detroit Lions, and considering the fact that the Bills are playing the Lions this weekend, if you're watching as of this video getting released, this feels like a good time to talk about the craziest field storm in NFL history that you've never heard of. Because more than half a century later, this is the story behind the worst field storm in NFL history. Before I talk about the actual game in question and what exactly transpired afterwards that led to complete and utter chaos, we need some context to understand the importance of the game, and in particular, how it pertains to this venue right here where the game was being played, War Memorial Stadium. Ever since the Bills became a franchise in 1960, in the days of the American Football League, they played their games at War Memorial Stadium, or the Rock Pile as many fans refer to it as. And I don't think I'm revealing any new information here when I say that this stadium absolutely stunk. It was small, it was in an unsafe part of town, it was falling apart, having been built in the 1930s, and it was a downright dangerous venue that attracted a bad crowd. I'm not going to go too much into depth on this, because I talked about it a while ago in a previous video of mine, when the Bills stadium situation was so bad because they hated playing War Memorial Stadium so much that they threatened to move to Seattle. So if you want to learn more about that, and want to watch one of my earliest history videos, you can do that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. However, this stadium, this atrocity of a stadium, was finally going to be no more, at least when it came to the Bills. Because to open up the 1973 season, the Bills were going to be moving to a modern venue of their own, moving to Orchard Park to play at Richards Stadium, which is the stadium that they still play at today, although this piece of information will be outdated with the opening of their new venue in 2026. And this meant that when Week 13 of the 1972 season rolled around, and this game right here was being played, as in a battle between the Buffalo Bills and the Detroit Lions, that this would be the final game at the Rock Pile. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. This was the stadium's last hurrah when it came to hosting NFL games. On December 10th, 1972, in the penultimate week of the season, these teams would meet for the very first time ever and would meet in the very last NFL game at War Memorial Stadium. This game meant nothing whatsoever for the Bills, as their first season and Lou Saban's second stint as head coach of the team had been a disaster, with the team sitting at 3-9, boasting a bottom 5 point differential in the NFL, and potentially being on pace with one loss in their final 2 games to have their 6th straight season of double-digit losses, which is embarrassing by itself, but is especially embarrassing when the season was only 14 games long. But that's not to say that this game wasn't important. For one, the Lions had a ton to play for. They entered this game at 7-5, and were 1 game back of the Green Bay Packers for the lead in the NFC Central. A win by the Packers, coupled with a loss or a tie by the Lions, would mean that the Lions would miss the postseason for the 2nd straight season. So the Lions desperately needed to win this one to keep their playoff hopes alive. Plus, even though this season hadn't gone according to plan for Buffalo, the fact that this was the final game ever at the Rock Pile meant a ton. There were lots of great memories for Bills fans there, including their win in the 1964 AFL Championship over the San Diego Chargers, and their stunning upset win in 1968 over the eventual Super Bowl champion New York Jets. To give one last memory at this stadium and go out with a bang, that is big. And as for how this game turned out, well, this game was quite literally evenly matched. Seriously, the game ended in a 21-21 tie, with the tie not just feeling like a loss for the Lions due to the fact that the Lions were 13-point favorites, but with the tie doubling as a loss since they were now officially eliminated from playoff contention. The game was tied 0-0 after 1, 7-7 after 2, 14-14 after 3, and 21-all after 4. And back in 1972, during regular season games, there was no overtime. Once 60 minutes was played, that was it. Both quarterbacks threw 3 touchdowns and no interceptions, and both teams traded punches right on cue, with the game never being more than 1 possession at any point. It was an exciting game in a not-so-exciting season for Buffalo, and was a fitting way for the Bills to leave their old venue behind before moving on to greener pastures in 1973. Safe to say, there was a lot of action during the game. But after the game, oh man, the action intensified. Because let's just say that people wanted a little bit of a souvenir. The stadium was still going to be used for minor league baseball, but for many people, this was going to be the last time that they ever came to the Rock Pile. I want a memento of the stadium, and if I get banned from coming back to the stadium again, so what? Not like I'm ever coming back. The Bills have no more games here. Let's get crazy. Let's go wild. So after the game was done, you had people trying to take a piece of the stadium, which is what we saw when the Cleveland Browns played their final game at Cleveland Municipal Stadium in 1995, when the New York Jets played their final game at Shea Stadium in 1983, when the Minnesota Vikings played their final game at the Met in 1981, and even today, when the Oakland Athletics in Major League Baseball played their final game of the Oakland Coliseum. You had fans taking the seats and the backs of the seats after this game right here. And to the surprise of no one, you had fans storming the field, ripping down the fences, and climbing the goalpost. Even the police could not deter them from climbing the post, as once the police shooed the fans away from one of the goalposts, they just moved 100 yards and went to the other goalpost. It was a lost cause. The field was destroyed. the stadium was getting ripped apart. It was a fitting way for the rock pile to go out from an NFL standpoint. And then things got really insane. Because on the field, the fans were fighting with each other trying to get souvenirs. And were fighting with each other just because of general drunkenness and the crowd that the rock pile attracted. And that's where we meet the main man of our story, a 58-year-old by the name of William Best. For the first 57 years of his life, Best had a pretty clean record and lived a rather mundane life. But December of 1972 was a weird month for him. It started off in tragic fashion when his mother-in-law, Della Wright, passed away. It didn't seem like a sudden death, but it always hurts to lose a family member. So his mind may not have been in the right place with his mother-in-law passing away just 7 days before. However, he decided to attend the final game of the season, going to War Memorial Stadium to watch his Bills take on the Lions. After the two teams tied, like a lot of fans, he decided to go onto the field. I doubt that he climbed the goalpost, because that'd be quite impressive to be able to pull that off in cold temperatures at 58 years old. But regardless, he was on the field. And he saw two of the Utes being rowdy, and looking like they were about to mug one of the other fans on the field. Not sure if this was for money, not sure if this was for a souvenir, not sure if this was for a dare. The details of what exactly these Utes wanted are fuzzy. It could be gang-related activity, we don't know. But Best decided that he was going to step in and break up the fight. He wanted to protect the fan from being hurt, and seeing as the police weren't doing their job, he was going to step in and protect the peace and try and prevent anyone from getting injured. So, he does what any reasonable fan would do in this spot and approaches the two teenagers and decides to pull out a gun. Seriously, you might be asking the obvious question here. How the heck did a man bring a gun into an NFL game? This wasn't a case of a man hopping the fence to get a gun in, a la what happened at Super Bowl 18, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. This was a man who just went to the game like a normal spectator, and no one noticed that he had a gun on him. And it's not as though this gun was empty. This was a loaded .22 caliber pistol. This man legit brought a loaded gun onto the field and threatened to shoot the teenagers, meaning that we were legitimately this close to having a mass shooting at an NFL game. At this point, the police stepped in, saw an older gentleman waving a gun in the air threatening to shoot teenagers, and decided to arrest the man because, well, duh. Easiest possession of a dangerous weapon charge you're going to see in your life. Now, keep in mind that Best claimed that he was trying to stop a mugging from happening. Whether that was true or not, I have no clue, as he might not be the most reliable narrator in the world. It doesn't answer the question of why he had a loaded gun on him in the first place, and how he got it into the stadium, especially since he had no permit. But it does answer the motive question, if true, of why he pulled it out. And if this story wasn't crazy enough, Best didn't have to serve any time after his arrest. Instead, he got a reduced charge of disorderly conduct and paid a $25 fine, which comes out to less than $200 today. For some perspective, in many states, you get fined $500 for driving in the HOV lane if you're not eligible to be in that lane. With inflation, Best got fined less than half the amount for threatening to shoot people, multiple people, at an NFL game and bring a loaded gun into a stadium without a permit and not for self-defense reasons. Seems kind of insane when you put it like that. Also seems insane that the last NFL action at the rock pile wasn't a game, but rather was a man trying to shoot teenagers on the field. Also seems insane that some people vehemently disagree with the verdict. Not the fact that he was only fined $25, but the fact that he even had to pay a fine in the first place, with one resident writing into the local newspaper saying that he was a hero, and saying, "I think the city of Buffalo and the loyal Buffalo Bill fans owe William Best an apology and the $25 he had to pay as a fine." Yeah, I've got nothing on that one. As for what happened after the game between these two teams behind me right here, when it came to William Best, the main man in the story, I couldn't find any other information on him besides this incident. So he probably kept a clean record, minus, the one time he threatened to shoot teenagers in an NFL game. He's got one thing on his resume, but it's a pretty bad thing to have. As for the Bills and the Lions, even though this was the last game played at the Rock Pile, oddly enough, the Lions and the Bills would not play each other again in Buffalo, and the Lions would not travel to Richard Stadium and Orchard Park until 1991, when that game was also coincidentally tied at the end of regulation. At least to my knowledge, nobody brought a loaded gun into that game and tried to shoot people, so a step in the right direction at the very least. And for the Buffalo Bills during the 1972 season, their final game of the season was a win, an upset win, mind you, against Washington, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Again, at least to my knowledge, no one brought a loaded gun into RFK Stadium that day, which again, step in the right direction. So as a word of advice, if you're going to an NFL game, there's a lot of things that you might need to bring. You want to bring your tickets. You'll want to bring the appropriate clothing, depending on the team you root for, and the temperature, and the weather. You'll want to bring your wallet to buy food and merchandise. And you'll want to bring anything else that you deem necessary, like your phone. But on the items to bring to a game, do not, under any circumstances, bring a loaded gun. It will not work out well for you. You will not be able to get it through security. If you somehow do like one fan did in 1972, don't be dumb enough to wave it around in the air and try and shoot people with it, unless you can afford to pay a $25 fine, which I guess is the going rate today for one beer, so who even knows at this point? I don't know where I'm going with this. This is just an insane story that I cannot comprehend half a century later. Fortunately, nobody died and nothing happened at the final game at War Memorial Stadium. But thanks to the worst field storming in NFL history, and let's be honest, I don't think there's a close second, we were dangerously close to the rock pile being a dead body pile.
Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.